Today on Meet Me for Coffee, a Canadian synth pop legend. From Montreal clubs to global charts, men without hats made the world dance if they wanted to. And they're back with a brand new record, On the Moon. Ivan, join us now. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, thanks.
On the Moon lands on November the 14th. What's the mission statement for this record, sonically and lyrically?
Well, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We do it we're good at. It's more 80s fare. We've got a couple of co-writes that I did with Brian Howes, producer here on Vancouver Island where I live. And our first two singles are going to be on the album, the I Love the 80s, which went to number one on the Heritage charts in the UK. We were really happy with that. Garnished us about 1.5 million views on YouTube already. So it's doing really well. The second single is out right now. It's called Inglorious Days, and it'll be on the album. There's a couple of surprises. There's a song in French for all our true Canadian fans, and there's a John Lennon cover too, Jealous Guy, that we do. So there's a lot of stuff, but it's 80s sounding, and it's bringing us back to that decade that we all love and cherish. So I hope people will like it.
The latest single, Inglorious Days, where does that sit in your arc of like music?
Well, it's actually one of the first co-wrotes that I've ever done with Brian. It's I love the 80s. I kind of brought the whole thing. He edited it and sort of rearranged it a bit, but we both sat down and wrote Inglorious Days together, and it was a great experience for me. It was just he had some ideas, I had some ideas, and we made it sound like Men Without Hats, and it's we can't wait to start playing it live too, because I think it's going to be a crowd pleaser. It's already doing really well. It's hit the UK Heritage chart already. It was number 35 this week, I think, and so yeah, it's going to be a crowd pleaser, I think.
And there's no legacy without some nostalgia, my friend. You've called the safety dance a protest against the pogo bans. In 2025, like where do you see that's still standing, or what's the rules on the dance floor creatively or culturally, in regards to that?
Well, I think that one of the reasons why that song has endured is because people still need to hear the message that they can dance if they want to, and especially in this era of social media when there's so much pressure on people to conform and follow the pack and not, step out of line. I think a song that reminds them that, they should be marching to their own drummer and just doing their own thing and don't feel too much peer pressure. Don't you don't have to conform. You can definitely get by doing your own thing. And I think it's just a message that people still need to hear. We've been helped along the way by a lot of the song has kind of embedded itself into popular culture with shows like The Simpsons, and especially something like Glee brought us to a whole new generation of listeners. But nowadays I hear 80s influences in pop music and in modern music today. I hear a lot of the big 80s drum sounds and synthesizers and robot voices. So it's the 80s never really went away. They're just it's still trending upwards.
I'm totally there with you. I'm at the point where I really believe that there will never be an era of music ever again so creative and so like uprooting, such as the 80s and classic rock. We look back, there'll never be music like that ever again. I don't believe that
Yeah.
will ever happen again.
Yeah, well, I think it boils down to just some good songs. It's good melodies. The 80s provided us with a lot of good sing-alongs, a lot of memorable tunes. And, I'm a big fan of rap music also, but I don't know how many Eminem songs we're going to be singing around the campfire in 20 years. Whereas the 80s there's a lot of real great melodies, a lot of great, it was also an era that was focused on the youth more than any other era, like the movies. it was the music, the movies, the clothes, everything was really geared towards the youth, the Brat Pack and the Breakfast Club and it's just all those Ferris Bueller, all it was all really there was a whole generation of pop culture going on there. It's more than the '60s and more than the '50s even. It was really geared towards young people, and I think people remember that now. People who grew up with that passed the love of '80s music down to their kids too. They passed it down to the next generation. There's a lot of people come to our shows. They tell us that they grew up listening to their parents' music. It's I think it's the first generation that did that. That like I never grew up listening to Frank Sinatra. It's like I did. It's I never paid any attention to my parents' music, but the '80s generation has seemed to have successfully passed the torch along to their kids and so on. When we play live now, we see our original fans, but we also see their kids too. They bring their kids, sometimes even their grandkids. It's become a real cross generational affair, and it's done us well.
I feel like the mood, it's the upbeat mood, the feel good. People want to feel good and they listen to music. It's their escape. I mean, your songs keep finding new generations. What's a placement or like a reinterpretation that honestly surprised you?
Well, like I said before, that it's embedded. It's a couple of the songs have really embedded themselves. Like Safety Dance has gone all the way to it's one of my favorite sort of uses of it was the Beavis and Butthead. When they're watching the video in their living room, and they say something like, he keeps saying he can dance, but he can't dance. He's got to be going to a Pantera concert or some heavy metal concert to learn how to dance. There's stuff like that. Like Pop Goes the World is a song that's being used as a soccer chant all over the world now. And, sort of like people have been sending me like videos, YouTube videos of like stadiums with like 80,000 people singing Pop Goes the World and stuff like that. So it's we're blessed that people are still listening to our music. It's what's sort of kept us out there on the road. I put the band back together in 2010, and we've done way more shows this time around and been to way more places than we did in the '80s. It's crazy, and it's just getting the demand is just getting bigger and bigger. It's really pretty cool.
Hey, you've got a really unique baritone signature. Like any warm-ups or technique that you swear by when you're doing your classical training in your early days or just before shows? Like how do you warm up your voice?
I put on some music and I sing along to music. I sing along to I put on a bunch of '80s songs. I sing "Tempted" by Squeeze or you know "Hole of the Moon" by the Water Boys. It's just some Elvis Costello. Just songs that are sort of stretch my voice in the lower register and also in the higher register too. I sing. That's what I do. I just put on some songs. My mother was a classical voice teacher at McGill University in Montreal, so she was kind of my first voice teacher, and my brother Colin took over from her, and he's been coaching me ever since. So I had some good teaching, good training, and my voice. I think my voice is getting stronger as I go along too. So it's getting using. I'm learning how to use it better, and not destroying it like a lot of singers of my age or their voices are shot because they didn't approach it right. They didn't start off singing properly. So at one point I had to sort of deconstruct my voice completely and relearn how to sing again. I did that with my brother Colin. We did that. It was faced with like long tours coming up. I decided that I really wanted to do a good job on it, and so we did that at one point. We just deconstructed my whole singing technique and I relearned it again too. So it's built it up stronger. It's been quite interesting.
Well, that's amazing to hear. We were talking before the show. You guys are busier than ever. You're going to Cancun very soon. For those who are expecting to see Ivan on the Canadian tour, he might have a tan going on. So, um,
Yeah.
If I was a young synth pop artist and asked for a 30-second playbook for a 40-year career, uh, what would you tell them or tell me?
I just say, keep working at it. Just keep. It's a craft, like any other thing, and you just have to keep. You just have to keep doing it. Keep writing and keep, keeping on top of the new technology, which is always important. That was we were fortunate enough to sort of start in an era where it was kind of the birth of synthesizers. I mean, until the 80s, synthesizers were like during the 70s, they were reserved to like Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Genesis and Pink Floyd. They were so expensive, but in the 80s they got affordable. And so everybody could kind of get one and start using analog synthesizers. So it was really exciting times. It was really exciting to experiment with that. But young songwriters just keep working at it. Keep listening to music and drawing from your inspirations and just keep working at it. It's a craft.
Now, like going on tour now, like what's one vintage piece of equipment that you refuse to tour without?
Oh well, we were kind of partial to sequential circuits, profits, and we used to tour with carry Prophet fives around with us, and now we carry it's a digital version of the Prophet five. It's a Prophet six that we use now. We use a keytar too, which is kind of harkens back to the 80s, and no, it's the equipment has gotten pretty sophisticated and everything like that. It's even in recording too now. You can when I do demos now, they're almost finished products, which is really amazing. And that's really cool for young songwriters too. That they, back in the days, it was really sort of it was hard to make records because it was so expensive. You had to have budgets and the gear was expensive, the studios were expensive, everything was really. But now people can do it in their living room, practically in their basements, and pull off some pretty amazing stuff. I've heard some pretty cool stuff that just came out of somebody's bedroom. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. Like everything is almost like it's at a high res studio. It's like phenomenal quality. You can mix it, you can master it in your own home if you wanted to. Um,
Yeah,
your songs often have the major key but melancholy DNA. Like, is that deliberate or you just have that ear for it?
I think that's just the way I write. I'm just what we've always tried to do was to approach serious themes, but in a fun way. Like sort of like a song like "Pop Goes the World" it was the beginning of the Green movement back then, and the message behind that song was we've got to start treating Mother Earth with more respect, or she's going to blow up. And there again, there's a theme that people are still concerned with today. But we tried to do it in a fun way, just in an upbeat sort of danceable way. I've always said, I grew up in the 70s. That was my sort of era of being a music fan. I listened to a lot of keyboard synthesizer music, and I was also front and center in the disco movement too. I was a big disco fan, a big club fan, and I've always said that 80s music for me was synthesizer music you could dance to. It was a mixture of prog rock and progressive rock music and disco. And that's kind of what I brought to the table in the 80s.
You have a lot of experience on the road performing in front of large crowds. Like, tell me about a time the crowd saved a bad night for you.
Well, we've had a lot of, you know, good experience. We've had some some weird ones too, but there was a time in Montreal we were opening up at the Montreal Forum for Roxy Music, and something went wrong with our the connection between our drum machine and our bass line, and the crowd sat there patiently and waited for about 10, 15 minutes, where they could have very easily started to boo us and cause a ruckus. But since it was a hometown crowd, they they were really super polite and just stayed there and waited until we got all our equipment fixed up. And when we started again, we got this huge roar and cheer. So it was great to have them behind us.
Yeah, it's always the music stuff. You're performing, anything can go wrong. A string can break, a pedal could not work, equipment could not work. Having the backups are always good, and the extra guitar or the extra synthesizer, this and that. Now, let's talk about a song that refused to be finished until someone made a weird suggestion. You ever had that situation before?
Well, we had there was one song. It was on our first EP. It's a staple in our live show too. It was our first single before the Rhythm of Youth album. A song called Antarctica. And what happened was the night before we went into studio to record it, our manager, we got together with our manager and we decided to play all the songs for him that we were going to be recording. It was a 4 song EP, so we were going to just run through the 4 songs. And Antarctica at the beginning, when we wrote it, it was a real slow kind of reggae kind of beat to it. And when we played it for our manager, for some reason, we dialed up the wrong speed on the drum box on the drum machine, and it played about 3 or 4 times faster than we had written it. And so we kind of jokingly played along with it and then we stopped it, halfway through and said, okay, well, we're going to we'll play it the real way now. And the manager said, no, 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 that's the real way. That's how it should be. So it was like a happy accident that turned out to one of our, one of our most sort of famous songs. It was our first single. So, just happy accidents like that happen. And it was good. It turned out really well for us.
That's absolutely incredible. I learned something amazing here on the show. Is there a stage superstition you still obey?
Well, we have our band this communal fist pump before we go up on stage, and that's one thing that we always it's our little we all touch base with each other and give ourselves a little cheer before going up, and that's something that we do every time. So that's that's been with us for a while.
And is there a song you wish you would have written not from the 80s?
Oh, geez, there's a lot of songs I wish I would have written. I think one of them. I mean, it's one of the ones I warm up with. "The Whole of the Moon" by the Waterboys is a song that I but a lot of people say that they wish they had written that song. But the guy who did write it was fortunate enough to have written a real great song. But there's a lot of good songs out there.
And the show is called Meet Me for Coffee. I got to get your coffee order. What's your coffee order?
My coffee is just a black double espresso.
That's absolutely amazing. That's actually exactly what I drink these days. If it's not
Yeah.
for Turkish coffee, you're listening to Ivan from Men Without Hats. The newest album, On the Moon, is coming out November the 14th. Check out their newest single, Inglorious Days, where we hear your music. There's an ongoing 2025 Canadian US tour happening right now with them on it. And thank you so much, man.
Well, my pleasure. Nice talking to you.
Thank you.